My husband, who was on an overseas assignment, was going to temporarily return home, and we decided to have a dinner party at the house where our son's family, who I live with, resides. We were having a pleasant conversation in a friendly atmosphere when our grandson, Daniel, suddenly changed the situation with a single remark.
Today isn't Grandma's punishment day, so you can eat, right?
Despite my best efforts to keep it together, I couldn't believe it was all ruined by a single word from my grandson. I was stunned and could only look down in silence. My son and his wife tried to cover it up in a panic, but the more they talked, the more Daniel revealed the truth. In her fluster, Kyla finally snapped. Enough. Just be quiet for a bit. She yelled at Daniel, making him cry. Then,
Don't just yell at a child.
Nelson's raised voice turned the dinner party atmosphere tense in an instant. Amid the silence of the living room, broken only by Daniel's sobbing, Nelson demanded an explanation from Caden. All the while, I was hugging Daniel, comforting him. In my arms, Daniel said,
I'm sorry, Grandma. Will you get scolded again because of me?
He was worried for me. What should I do now? I could only stay silent, holding Daniel tightly. I am Elizabeth Pratt, a housewife in my 60s. Nelson and I fell in love while working at the same company, so it was really tough until we decided to get married and I quit my job. In those days, without phones, it wasn't easy to exchange contact information, and there was a general attitude of keeping workplace romances secret. So, until we got engaged, I was always on edge, worried that my boss might find out. Even after our engagement, we struggled with seating arrangements and speeches for the wedding, to the point where I didn't know who the wedding was for anymore. Moreover, any slip-up could lead to Nelson, who stayed with the company, being subject to snide remarks later, so we couldn't afford to relax. However, thanks to those struggles, we are now bound by a strong bond. I realized this especially when Nelson's overseas assignment was decided, leading to us living apart. 3 months before his departure.
I think I can come back within 3 years, but I'm worried. Why don't you come with me?
I appreciate the thought, but at my age, moving overseas is too much. Unlike you, I can only speak English. Nelson was always worried about leaving me alone in America. Besides, if anything happens, Caden and his family are here, and we can always talk on the phone, so don't worry too much.
Yeah, you're right.
Caden is our only son. 14 years ago, when Caden started university, he moved out to live on his own. After graduation, he met Kyla in the cafeteria at his workplace, and they got married 7 years ago. 2 years after their marriage, our grandson Daniel was born. Caden, who rarely came home when he was single, started visiting regularly after Daniel was born. Both Nelson and I always look forward to seeing Caden's family. But beyond that, our time as a couple was very peaceful and enjoyable. Especially, Nelson planning trips for us during his long holidays made me happy.
I've been busy with work and left everything at home to you. From now on, let's spend more time together as a couple.
He would always take me to the places I wanted to go. For us, this was the first time Nelson had to live alone for work. Moreover, since it was overseas, returning home wouldn't be easy. It was understandable that Nelson was worried. However, if anything happened, Caden's family, living just 15 minutes away from the nearest bus stop, could help. So I always reassured Nelson that there was no need to worry. About a month and a half before Nelson's departure, I injured my back and had to go to the hospital. It was a mild case of a herniated disc, so I could manage going to the hospital and maintaining minimal daily activities on my own. However, to Nelson, who was about to leave, it was a major concern, and he said he would delay his departure until my back healed. I appreciate the thought, but it's not something that should delay your work.
But I can't leave you alone like this. What if something happens?
I tried to reassure him, but Nelson was adamant about not leaving me alone. Days passed with our discussions going nowhere. We're both adults, so don't worry about something like this. If anything happens, Caden and his family will help. As usual, I was trying to convince Nelson. Then, he had a flash of inspiration and said,
Caden. That's it. Let's ask if you can live with Caden.
Ha! Nelson immediately called Caden and explained my back situation and his overseas assignment. After hearing the story, Caden said,
I understand. I'll talk to Kyla, so give me a moment.
He then hung up. I thought it was impossible for them to agree to such a sudden request to live together. However, Caden's answer was completely opposite to my expectations.
Kyla agrees too. It's only for about 3 years, right? That's no problem at all.
I see. That's a relief. We should thank Kyla soon. Caden, take care of your mom.
So, I ended up living with Caden's family, pushed by Nelson. Caden's wife, Kyla, worked as a chef in the same company cafeteria where she met Caden. A year ago, they opened their dream restaurant and both worked hard together. I'm sorry for asking you to take care of me when you're so busy with the new restaurant. A few days after deciding to live together, we had a dinner with Caden's family. While Nelson and Caden were chatting and drinking, I quietly apologized to Kyla. I thought it must be a burden for Kyla to take care of an injured mother-in-law for 3 years, especially at such an important time for her restaurant. However, Kyla said, "Don't worry about it. We help each other in times of need. Also, once you feel better, could you occasionally look after Daniel?" Kyla asked me. He's in daycare, but he's always alone from evening to night. Seeing Kyla's apologetic expression, I understood why she agreed to live together. She probably wanted me to look after Daniel. Of course. If there's anything else I can do, don't hesitate to ask. I replied with a smile, and Kyla also smiled, relieved. I was truly relieved that I wasn't just a burden. Living with Caden's family was more peaceful and comfortable than I had expected. Not only did they accept me willingly, but they also provided me with a room of my own since they had an unused one. Wanting to be of help to Caden's family, I started doing the laundry, washing dishes, and picking up Daniel from daycare. I also began cooking dinner in place of Kyla, who often worked late due to preparations for the next day. Caden and Kyla always expressed their gratitude, and I could spend all my time with my adorable grandson. Although this cohabitation started on Nelson's sudden whim, I was truly happy and spent each day grateful to my husband and son. However, this happy time did not last long. The trigger was an innocent comment Daniel made during dinner.
I like Grandma's food better than Mom's.
Oh dear. Thank you. There was no way my simple home cooking could surpass a professional chef. But to Daniel, who had parents running a healthy restaurant, my American-style cooking might have seemed delicious. Additionally, Daniel proudly mentioned that he could eat vegetables he usually disliked if I cooked them. I praised Daniel, telling him he was amazing. To be honest, Daniel's likes and dislikes were very similar to Caden's when he was a child. So, I just made the dishes that Caden liked, and by coincidence, Daniel ate them too. However, this seemed to have struck a nerve with Kyla. If you like Grandma's cooking so much, why don't you have her cook for you every day from now on? Kyla's expression was calm, but her tone clearly indicated she was angry. Both Caden and I sensed that saying anything unnecessary would be unwise and continued eating in silence. However, 5-year-old Daniel didn't notice this and said,
Really? Yay. I get Grandma's food every day.
He was overjoyed. Seeing Daniel's reaction only made Kyla's mood worse. Since then, I started preparing all meals for Caden's family. Being a housewife, cooking was no burden at all. The problem was that Kyla's gaze became increasingly sharp as she watched Daniel and Caden enjoying my food. Moreover, Daniel began to call for me for everything. Bath time, reading stories, getting dressed, drawing, bedtime, no matter what it was, he called for me. I responded happily because I loved my grandson, but Kyla might have felt as if her child was being taken away. Elizabeth, please don't spoil Daniel. This is why old people are annoying. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be careful. Before I knew it, Kyla's attitude towards me had become cold and filled with resentment. For months after my husband went overseas, Kyla came to me with a proposal. From today, in lieu of rent, you will do all the household chores. When I asked why she suddenly said this, Kyla explained that it was unfair to provide food and utilities for an additional adult for 3 years without compensation. She wanted me to repay this inconvenience through labor. Your back pain is healed, right? Then from now on, work properly. Her cold gaze and matter-of-fact tone left me speechless. Was this really the same Kyla I knew before living together? Though I was terrified by how much she had changed, I decided to comply silently. After all, she had a point. Expenses had increased with one more adult in the house. I understood her desire to offset this through chores. I resolved to be more considerate of Kyla and reduce her burden. By doing so, I hoped she would calm down and things would return to how they were. At that time, I genuinely believed that with effort, we could restore our good relationship. However, this hope was soon shattered. When I folded the laundry, I was scolded for doing it poorly. When I washed the dishes, I was berated for doing it badly. When Daniel showed affection towards me, I was accused of bribing him with food to win his favor. No matter how hard I tried to be considerate, it only seemed to provoke Kyla more. Still, I continued to handle household chores for the sake of my son and his family. The only solace I found was that Daniel and Caden enjoyed my cooking and finished their meals. However, even this soon became a problem. What's so great about this old-fashioned home cooking? It's bland, unattractive, and inedible. After saying this, Kyla would head to the kitchen, cook a meal for herself, and eat alone. The atmosphere at the dinner table was icy, as if we had seen a ghost. I was too scared to move, fearing what harsh words Kyla would say next. Daniel, sensing the tension, lost his appetite and left his meal unfinished. When dinner ended and I stood up to clear the dishes, Kyla called out in a cold, low voice. "Elizabeth, sit down for a moment." Dreading the reprimand, I sat back down and cautiously looked at Kyla's face, which was more hostile than ever. "I'm a professional. When I cook, it incurs a cost. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand." I forced out a response. "Since you made me cook outside of work, you need to be punished." The word punished sent a chill down my spine. What more could she do when I was already feeling so broken? With my fingers growing cold and clammy with sweat, I waited for her words. Kyla twisted her mouth into a sneer and said, "No food for you tomorrow," before leaving the living room. I was momentarily stunned by the lack of insults or verbal abuse. Is this really all? I had never experienced such a light punishment, which made it all the more frightening. The next day, when I actually went without food, I quickly understood the severity of this punishment. Even when I felt faint with hunger, I wasn't allowed to rest from household chores. Moreover, I still had to prepare meals for Caden's family, my stomach constantly rumbling. Running errands became a battle against fainting from hunger. I began to think that enduring her insults at home was far better than this. Such punishment occurred 3 times a week. Caden, who could have been my only ally, was too busy appeasing Kyla to be of any help. In fact, he had recently started joining Kyla in berating and exploiting me. The only consolation I had was my grandson Daniel, but even that was restricted since Kyla would scold him if she saw him being kind to me. I had to limit my interactions with Daniel to the bare minimum. The room that was meant for me had turned into a storage space, leaving no place to stretch out and sleep. I had become less than a burden. I often thought of returning to my home to escape this treatment. But the thought of my husband worrying about me overseas kept me from acting on it. At most, it would be 3 years. If I could endure, everything would be fine. Living in constant fear of Kyla's anger, I continued my hollow existence. A little over a year after my husband went overseas, one day he called.
"Hi, Caden. It's sudden, but I'll be back next week for a short visit. How about we all go out for dinner?"
Next week? That's too sudden. How about we have dinner at our place instead?
Sure, that sounds good. By the way, how's Mom? Every time I call, I'm told she's busy with Daniel, so we hardly talk.
Yeah, she's fine. We'll see you next week then.
Caden ended the call abruptly. At dinner, he shared the news with Kyla and me. Kyla looked visibly annoyed, but I was secretly overjoyed. Since my husband went overseas, he had only called a few times in the early months. I thought he was too busy to call, but I had been very lonely. On top of that, Kyla forbade me from calling him, so I could only wait for his calls. I worried about whether he had any injuries or illnesses, or if he was overworked. Next week, I could finally confirm these worries. I felt a surge of life returns to me. However, seeing my excitement, Kyla became furious. "What's with that happy face? Are you implying I'm the bad guy here?" "What?" No, I never said that. Shut up. Don't talk back. You're being punished again today. Confused and upset, I was denied food once again. For the week leading up to my husband's visit, on top of household chores, I was forced to help with the restaurant's preparations and distribute heavy flyers. Don't come back until you've handed out all the flyers. She would kick me out of the house. The treatment was harsher than ever, and I was on the verge of collapse daily. What had I done to anger her so much? Too tired and hungry to figure it out, I spent each day even more careful around Kyla. Finally, the day of the meal with my husband arrived. I prepared his favorite dishes and waited for him at the entrance.
Elizabeth. I missed you. You've lost weight and look pale.
That's not true. You look exhausted too. His sharp observation made me nervous. The past week had been so punishing that I was truly on the brink of collapse. But I tried to hide my poor condition so as not to worry him. Still, my husband's concern deepened as he continued questioning.
I've been calling regularly, but you never answer. Has something happened here?
What? Regularly? Since when?
Since I went overseas, I've called twice a month. I was always told you were busy with Daniel.
I had no idea he had been calling so frequently. As I stood there in shock, Caden and Kyla emerged from the house. They greeted my husband with smiles and led him to the living room. Daniel, waiting there, excitedly ran to my husband, who was delighted to see his grandson after more than a year. This heartwarming scene made me momentarily forget our conversation at the entrance. Soon, Kyla announced the start of the meal. As everyone took their seats around the table, enjoying the cheerful atmosphere, I found myself standing alone a little distance away, out of habit. Noticing this, Kyra called out to me in a flustered tone. Elizabeth, what are you doing? Please sit down quickly. Startled, I hurried to sit down. My husband watched this scene with a curious expression. If I make another mistake, I might suffer more severe punishment later. With that thought in mind, I decided to focus on assisting my husband by serving food and drinks. Thanks to this, the meal continued peacefully without any further incidents. Just as I began to feel relieved, Daniel, my grandson, remembered something and spoke up.
Hey, Grandma doesn't have punishment today, right? It's good she can eat.
Daniel's cheerful smile caused Kyra and Caden to turn pale, their hands and shoulders trembling, their eyes darting nervously. Anyone could see something was wrong, but they forced smiles and desperately tried to cover up Daniel's words. The more they talked, the more Daniel, oblivious to the situation, kept speaking the truth. Panicking, Kyra finally snapped. Just be quiet for a bit. She yelled, causing Daniel to burst into tears. Seeing this, my husband raised his voice in anger.
Don't shout at the child like that.
The pleasant meal instantly turned tense. In the now silent living room, only Daniel's crying could be heard. My husband, with a voice lower and heavier than I had ever heard, demanded an explanation from Caden.
I spoke to Elizabeth earlier, and she said she didn't know about the bi-monthly calls. What's going on?
Well, that is. I mean.
Facing his father's stern demeanor for the first time, Caden was visibly shaken. My husband's persistent questioning led Caden to confess everything about their treatment of me. Throughout this, I held and comforted Daniel. Despite fearing more scolding from Kyra later, I couldn't leave my sobbing grandson.
Sorry, Grandma. Will you get scolded because of me?
I gently stroked Daniel's head. Don't worry. Daniel, you did nothing wrong. I reassured him as best as I could. After about 10 minutes of questioning, my husband, overwhelmed with disappointment, buried his head in his hands. Discovering that his son and daughter-in-law had been mistreating his wife was hard to believe. Adding to his distress was the fact that he had proposed the cohabitation and had supported the restaurant's opening. The shock was immense.
I trusted you both, which is why I supported Elizabeth living with you and helped with the restaurant funds. What were you thinking?
After pondering for a while, my husband suggested ending the cohabitation. He also demanded the immediate return of all the living expenses he had sent during this period. Hearing this, I was shocked. What? Wait a minute. What living expenses?
You didn't know about that either.
Seeing me shake my head, my husband looked even more dejected and glared at Caden and Kyra. According to him, when the cohabitation was arranged, it was agreed that he would send $300 monthly for my living expenses. Caden was supposed to inform me about this arrangement later. But I had never heard anything about the remittance. Instead, I had been told to work to cover living costs and had been treated like a servant. Upon learning this, my husband, in a steady and grave voice, demanded Caden return all the money.
All of it. The restaurant funds and the living expenses. Return everything.
Hearing this, Caden and Kyra turned pale and began apologizing, even bowing down to my husband. Kyra explained that despite 2 years since opening, the restaurant had been struggling, which fueled their resentment toward me for living comfortably with Daniel. Caden admitted to keeping the remittance for themselves and preventing my husband's calls to hide their actions. Although they apologized and promised to change, my husband's anger did not abate. He took me back to my family home and, during his short stay, retrieved all the money he had given Caden and Kyra. Before his departure, he arranged for me to stay at a business hotel, ensuring my safety until he could return from overseas.
I'll arrange to come back to the US soon. The hotel staff will keep you safe until then.
Though I felt staying at home was enough, I agreed, not wanting to worry him further. Hotel life proved to be comfortable, and my health and spirits improved remarkably. In less than a month, my husband returned. The hotel bill was staggering, but he was relieved to see me looking healthier. I felt profoundly grateful to have such a caring husband. Back home, Caden and Kyra frequently visited, pleading for more financial support. However, the trust once broken could not be restored. Their restaurant, struggling even more, eventually closed within 2.5 years. Their dreams shattered, and their marriage fell apart. Kyra left, taking only her belongings, leaving Caden with their son, Daniel. Caden, now burdened with debt and child-rearing, turned his life around, finding a new job and working hard. To support him, I began caring for Daniel again. Though we provided no financial help, I took care of Daniel when Caden worked late. Daniel, soon to be a primary school student, proudly showed off his new backpack.
Look at this backpack. It's so cool with this gold part. Thank you, Grandpa and Grandma.
Watching Daniel, full of pride, always brought me joy. My husband and I look forward to supporting Daniel and hope Caden finds a kind and compassionate partner. How did you like this story? Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Here's a gift, $2,000. After giving birth, my husband and I returned to his family home, and his mother handed us an envelope supposedly containing $2,000 as a baby gift. After checking the contents, I threw the envelope into the trash. This was the final straw after enduring daily disparagement from my mother-in-law and senior employees.
What are you doing? Apologize to my mom.
I sternly told my flustered husband. Can you say the same thing after seeing this? Upon checking the contents of the envelope, my husband glared at his mother with an anger I'd never seen before. This moment led my husband to make a crucial decision. My name is Alice Catcher, 28 years old. I married Harrison through an arranged marriage. Harrison, 2 years older than me, is the eldest son of a patisserie and was strictly raised to be the heir. He is a very gentle and kind person. From the first time we met, I was drawn to his kindness.
I want to share the beauty and delicate taste of my pastries with the world. Will you help me make this dream come true?
Harrison said this and gave me a pastry that he made in my image instead of an engagement ring. As I shed tears of joy, Harrison continued.
When we get married, you will work at our shop. Also, you'll live with my parents in their home. Is that all right?
Living with his parents was a condition of our marriage. Marrying an heir comes with its challenges, but with Harrison by my side, I was sure I could handle it. I accepted his proposal, and we became husband and wife. As promised, after the wedding, we started living with my in-laws in the house that also serves as the patisserie. Alice, since you've married into this family, you must be prepared. Behave appropriately as a wife. Yes. On the day I stepped into my husband's family home, my mother-in-law immediately hit me with strict words. The sweet married life I had dreamt of did not exist in this world. Alice, how many times do I have to tell you? Learn our customs properly. As the daughter-in-law, you need to be more aware of your actions. It's such a burden for your mother-in-law to have to deal with someone as troublesome as you. Every day, I was belittled by my mother-in-law and senior female employees. My father-in-law was quiet and didn't speak much, but whenever he was around, the tension would peak, making me so nervous that I would make mistakes. Seeing this, my father-in-law would openly sigh at me. There was no place for me to relax in this house. But I was determined to work hard to gain everyone's approval and not be an embarrassment to Harrison. This determination was my only support. In the midst of all this, I found out I was pregnant. Take care of yourself and have a healthy heir. Everyone, including my mother-in-law, started to show concern for my well-being. At the 5-month checkup, I learned the baby's gender and announced it to my in-laws and Harrison during dinner. The baby is a girl. For a moment, everyone froze. A girl? Oh, a girl. No one offered any words of congratulations. Harrison kept his head down and continued eating silently, avoiding eye contact with anyone. I felt disheartened by their reactions. Is an heir only acceptable if it's a boy? Confused by the family's expectations, I anxiously ate my dinner. The next day, everyone's attitude changed dramatically. Pregnancy isn't an illness. Stop being so lazy and work properly. As soon as they learned the baby was a girl, the daily belittlement and overworking resumed. Why can't a girl inherit the patisserie? It's so sad that my child isn't welcomed and celebrated. I began to worry about my unborn daughter. I vowed to protect her no matter what. Harrison, you must have noticed. Since I married into this family, I've been belittled every day by your mother and the senior employees. Now that they know the baby is a girl, their treatment is unbearable. One day, unable to bear it any longer, I confided in Harrison. He looked troubled.
I'm sorry, Alice. I'm still in training and don't have the right to oppose my family. Please endure it. Once you get better at your work, they'll stop criticizing you. I'm happy with our baby whether it's a boy or a girl. Please take care of yourself.
With these words, he quickly headed to the bath. Though Harrison showed some concern for my well-being, I was disappointed by how unreliable he seemed. However, I touched my belly and told myself, I can't let this get me down. I'm going to be a mother. I have to be strong for my child. With renewed determination, I endured the mistreatment and belittlement alone, dreaming of the day my baby would be born healthy. In my in-laws' house, I was mainly responsible for preparing dinner. When buying ingredients, I would pay for them first and then get reimbursed by my mother-in-law after showing her the receipts. This system meant that I couldn't buy what I wanted without her scrutinizing the receipts. However, after becoming pregnant, I often craved sour and sweet things. Should I buy it? But I don't want to hear more snide remarks from my mother-in-law. Despite this internal struggle during shopping, I never had the courage to buy what I wanted. One day, my craving for something sweet became unbearable. I couldn't resist any longer and asked Harrison in the workshop, I'm craving something sweet because of the pregnancy. Could I have some scraps if there are any?
Sure, wait a moment.
Harrison discreetly wrapped some leftover scraps in plastic wrap and handed them to me. Thank you. Just then, my mother-in-law appeared. What are you doing here, Alice? She looked at the scraps in my hand. How disgraceful. This is a workshop for professionals. You are not allowed in here anymore. She took the scraps and chased me out of the workshop. One day, when I opened the refrigerator to prepare dinner, I found it stuffed with high-end ingredients like expensive beef. I asked my mother-in-law for permission to use them. Can I use the food in the fridge? What are you talking about? Those are for Cindy, who's coming back the day after tomorrow. Don't touch them. Cindy is Harrison's sister, who married a farmer. She was 3 months pregnant and returning home because of severe morning sickness. 3 months pregnant and returning home? At 7 months pregnant, I've been told, pregnancy isn't an illness. Despite my feelings, thinking about it only made me more miserable. I pulled myself together and prepared dinner with other ingredients. When Cindy came home, my mother-in-law was in high spirits all day. Having opposed Cindy's marriage to a farmer, my mother-in-law was overjoyed to have Cindy back home. I'll make dinner today, Alice. Why don't you go for a walk and relax? Unusually kind, my mother-in-law's offer was rare. Normally, evenings were busy, so I took her up on the offer to enjoy a leisurely walk. Oh, the sky is so high. Looking up at the sky for the first time in a while, it was a calming red, enveloping me in warmth. As I placed my hand on my belly, I felt the baby move. Mommy will work hard for you. Stay healthy and come out soon. I whispered to my unborn child. The smell of steak greeted me when I returned home. As I approached the living room, I heard voices from inside. Cindy, eat plenty for the baby's sake. Peeking inside, I saw my mother-in-law setting a feast before Cindy. My father-in-law and Harrison were also there, quietly eating steak.
What about Alice's portion?
At Harrison's question, my mother-in-law replied, "Oh, it's fine. I made some stew for her." Without another word, Harrison averted his gaze from me. So there's no steak for me. Unable to bear it any longer, I quietly retreated to our room. Even though I'm pregnant like Cindy, no one tells me to eat plenty. Instead, I'm excluded. The realization of being treated so unfairly overwhelmed me, and I couldn't stop the tears. Why do I have to endure such treatment? No one in this house welcomes me or my baby. I wish I could just leave this place. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. After a while, Harrison came over with a cold steak.
I brought my portion secretly. It's cold, though. I'm sorry for making you feel even worse because of my sister's visit.
Harrison apologized with a genuinely remorseful look.
I wish I could be more assertive. I'm not good with mom or sis. Mom had a tough time being harassed by my grandmother, so she probably thinks this is how in-law relationships should be. Sis has disliked me since childhood because I was the pampered eldest son, and she would always be mean to me behind the scenes. Both of them are strong-willed and troublesome, so honestly, I don't want to be involved with them.
His family's issues were none of my concern. Even though he apologized, I realized that he wouldn't protect me or our child in the future. His unreliability made me feel even more miserable. Urged by him to eat the steak, I had no appetite, but I forced myself to eat the cold steak for the sake of the baby. Despite the steak being high quality, I couldn't taste anything. Mechanically chewing, I somehow managed to swallow it. Life after Cindy returned was particularly hard on me as a pregnant woman. "Alice, fetch this for me." Despite my large belly, she made me do chores. Cindy should rest until her morning sickness subsides. Meanwhile, Cindy lounged around all day, pampered by her family. We were both pregnant, but my belly was much bigger. It was unfair. I had no choice but to endure it quietly for now.
Alice, I bought some pudding for you.
Feeling pity for the harsh treatment I endured, Harrison began secretly buying me things I wanted to eat, which was a small comfort. One day, I saw in Cindy's room a collection of high-end baby and maternity items. I had bought everything cheaply from an outlying store out of consideration for my in-laws. Both our babies are their grandchildren, so why such disparity? Trying not to dwell on it, I still felt deeply saddened. Finally, on December 20th, I gave birth to a baby girl. Harrison was overjoyed and cried tears of happiness.
I'll become responsible and protect you and our child.
He promised. After being discharged, I returned to the in-laws' house, where surprisingly, his mother greeted us with a smile. "Let me hold her." When I handed over the baby, she, having raised 2 children, skillfully soothed her. Even she finds her grandchild adorable. Her behavior reassured me a bit. After a while, she handed the baby back to me and took an envelope from her pocket, giving it to him. "Here's $2,000 as a gift." "What? That much?" I was surprised, but he seemed unfazed. Maybe such amounts were customary for celebrations in this house. He handed me the envelope without checking the contents, so I took it after placing the baby in the crib. I decided to check inside just in case. What the? What's this? She averted her gaze with a smirk. That's enough. I threw the envelope into the trash.
Hey, what are you doing? Apologize to Mom.
He panicked. Can you still say that after seeing this? I picked up the discarded envelope and showed him its contents. His brows furrowed. The envelope didn't contain $2,000 but a bundle of receipts and invoices for luxury baby items and maternity goods that his parents had bought for Cindy.
What is this, Mom?
Even he raised his voice. It's normal for the eldest son's family to cover our expenses. She shamelessly spouted nonsense. Why should we pay for Cindy's maternity and baby goods? I couldn't stay silent anymore. I resolved to leave this house with my child. At that moment, his low voice echoed.
We're leaving this house.
What? The room fell silent, and everyone, including me, looked at him. He glared at his mother with a rage I'd never seen before.
What do you think we are? I've been dissatisfied with your treatment of Alice, your reaction when our baby was a girl, and your interference with the business. I endured it because I wanted to become capable enough to manage the patisserie. But I've reached my limit. We're leaving. I won't take over the store. Thank you for everything.
He bowed deeply to his parents. Shocked into silence, they eventually left the room quietly.
Alice, I'm truly sorry. I'll protect you and our child from now on. I decided to leave without consulting you, but will you stay with me?
His usual gentle face had returned. Yes. Thank you for protecting us. We'll face everything together as a family. The next day, he immediately started looking for a new place, and within a week, the three of us began a new life. The new apartment was small, but it was a peaceful and happy space for me. Eat well and rest whenever you can. And surprisingly, the new place was just a 5-minute walk from my parents' house. Harrison is wonderful. It's rare for someone to admit their weaknesses and ask for help. According to my mother, he had explained and apologized to my parents that night, asking for their support. Always rely on us. We're thrilled to have you close by. Her kindness brought me to tears. Meanwhile, his mother sometimes asked him to bring the baby to visit, but he only sent photos. After discussing it, we decided it was best to keep some distance from his parents for a while, and we kept our new address secret. Thanks to that, we had peaceful days.
Alice, we're running out of diapers. I'll go buy some.
He actively helped with chores and childcare, and we cherished our modest happiness every day.
I want to start a business.
One day, he told me this. Drawn to the allure of sweets since childhood, he hadn't given up on working with them, even after giving up on inheriting the family business. He still dreamed of sharing the beauty and delicate taste of sweets with the world. He decided to start an online sweets company. Inspired by him, I also wanted to help fulfill his dream. Utilizing my brief experience with the in-laws bakery, I brainstormed ideas while managing housework and childcare.
Look at the pretty sweets Daddy made.
One day, he showed our child his sweets. Although our baby couldn't eat them, they were mesmerized by the gentle colors and giggled excitedly. Seeing this, I had an idea. How about making sweets that even babies can eat? Envisioning the baby's smile, I shared the idea with him.
That's a great idea.
He embraced the concept. We focused on developing baby-friendly sweets using natural sweetness from ingredients like yams, without sugar or artificial colors, showcasing the ingredients' natural hues. Within 3 months, we created the envisioned product. Initially, we placed it in a friend's patisserie to gauge customer reactions, and it was surprisingly well received, praised as perfect for birthday parties. Encouraged, we began selling online, and it quickly became a hit. Featured in the media, our company grew steadily. As the business flourished, we were fully occupied with childcare and work, but by the time our daughter turned 2, the company had stabilized, generating consistent income. With more stability, I began thinking about his family. After we left, Cindy developed preeclampsia and was hospitalized. Her unhealthy diet of high-calorie foods and lack of exercise likely contributed. Though she had a difficult pregnancy, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, which must have relieved everyone. Unfortunately, his family's patisserie struggled without him and eventually closed. What happened to your parents after closing the shop? I asked him. They were living modestly on their pension. Though I had few fond memories, they had raised him. 2 years had passed since we left the in-laws' house, and as my anger subsided, I discussed with him the idea of giving them $2,000 each as a birthday present. This amount came from what his mother had mentioned as a birth gift. I wasn't sure if she remembered, but if she did, I hoped it would prompt her to reflect. Later, we received a call informing us that the money had arrived, and they were very pleased. While we weren't ready to visit yet, I believed time would heal things. As long as we lived with dignity, things would eventually improve. Parenting was still challenging, but with the support of my parents, I could work on our confectionery business with him.
Mom, is this my candy?
Yes, Daisy. Aren't the petals beautiful? Do you like it?
Delicious. I'm happy.
She put her hands on her cheeks, showing a very happy expression. This was a candy we developed for 1-year-olds that melts in the mouth without chewing. It was shaped like the petals of the flower daisy, after our daughter's name. I hoped this candy would bring smiles to everyone, just like our daughter does.
Mommy say, ah, for me.
She placed the candy in my mouth, and its gentle sweetness melted away.
I love your face when you eat candy, Mommy.
I wished that such happy moments would come to people worldwide as they enjoyed our sweets. How did you enjoy today's story? Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.